Because of the valuable role that they play within needs analysis and business analysis at large, it's worth taking a moment to define exactly who we're talking about when we say the word stakeholders. Stakeholders can be represented by either individuals, groups, or organizations. In each case, one thing definitely ties stakeholders to the analysis that we're conducting. There's a project of some sort or a proposal that might be the result of our business analysis, if we indicate that getting to that future state will require some work. When that's the case, if these stakeholders either are affected by the project, can have an effect on the project, or perhaps most importantly, perceive that they may be affected by the project, then they can be considered a stakeholder. Now, the perceived effect is very important here, because in some cases, stakeholders might not be directly affected, or might just barely be affected by the project itself. However, if they hold any power, and if they're able to make their opinions known, they can have an impact on the way that we conduct our business analysis, and on how any project would move forward. As such, we have to treat them with the same respect and communicate with them at the same level as we would others who would directly be affected by or would potentially have a direct impact on the project. While all stakeholders are important, certain key stakeholders require additional attention. These serve as primary sources of information during the needs assessment phase. Oftentimes, they're in positions to know things that other stakeholders simply aren't. And that information can be essential as we begin to construct our goals and determine how valid our objectives are as we try to specify exactly what needs need to be filled. These key stakeholders are critical to the formation, approval, or execution of any work that will help to meet these objectives. So even if they don't have a direct role to play in your business case that you're building, a proposal for a project, they absolutely will when it comes to the project itself, and we have to prepare accordingly. Some of the roles that key stakeholders might play include sponsor, both of the business analysis that you might be accomplishing now and of the project that might be its result. These sponsors are responsible for the overall project or action as well as its initiation. The business analyst, if it's you would be considered a key stakeholder as well. If there are other analysts who are involved here, then they could also be considered key stakeholders due to the type of research and analysis that you and other analysts are doing. Project managers would also be considered key stakeholders. After all, they're going to be the ones responsible for planning and executing project work, potentially based on the recommendations that business analysis yields. Benefactors could be considered those who provide funding and support for the project. These could be upper-level executives within the organization that buy into the concept behind your proposal, but don't necessarily take a day-to-day role in helping it come to fruition. Instead, they are the gatekeepers who provide the funding and the resources needed for you to move forward, alongside your project sponsor and others who can provide similar support. Beneficiaries are those who might stand to gain from the project or the action, whereas the impacted are those who may be influenced in either neutral or negative ways by either the outcome of our research, the ongoing work of a project, or of the project's result. Users are another key group of stakeholders. Who's going to use the solution or the result that we end up proposing at the end of our business analysis? Regulators are also important as they may require work or our work's result to fit within certain constraints. These regulators can be found internally for those who are in charge of corporate policy, as well as externally in areas like government agencies, which may require that work be done in certain fashions. Implementers can be considered those who conduct project work directly in order to bring about our desired result. These would be the frontline workers responsible for helping to fill that gap in our capabilities in order to reach that desired future state. Finally, maintainers are those who would be responsible for supporting a solution following its development. After all, most of the time, business analysis results in a project, but projects by their very nature are temporary. Once they've created their unique result, the project team is often wound down or moved on to another project, leaving behind those who will be responsible for the day-to-day operations of its result. That's where these stakeholders come in, and due to their long-term exposure and ownership over the solution, are particularly critical to speak with early on in understanding needs. When grouping stakeholders, it's often helpful to think about them using what's known as a RACI chart. This stands for responsible, accountable, consult, and inform. Those who are responsible are in charge of performing needs assessment directly. Those who are accountable approve needs assessment activities taking place. Those who consult will be asked for input due to insight regarding the issue at hand. They may be subject matter experts, for example, even if they don't have any direct executive authority over the results of our assessment. And those who need to be informed will receive the results of the needs assessment and perhaps have an opportunity to provide feedback on it in a later stage. This same RACI chart can be applied to other areas of business analysis and project management as well, and the exact roles of stakeholders may change over time. Let's look at an example. Here we see a chart that includes our different responsibilities here. For the project sponsor, they might be accountable for identifying the problem or opportunity and for assessing the current state of the organization. However, they're not directly responsible for these activities. They just are the ones who need to ensure that they're completed successfully. When it comes to recommending action and preparing the business case, they simply need to be informed of these steps. For a product manager, they may need to be consulted when it comes to identifying a problem or opportunity, but they're not going to be held directly responsible for its outcome. They need to be informed about the current state of the organization as we assess that, but they will be held accountable for recommending actions and preparing the business case. This makes sense as they'll be the ones that we turn some of this work over to at a later stage after the business analyst completes their work. Here, we see that the business analyst is responsible across the board for all of these areas. So even if they're not directly in charge of every facet of each of these steps, they are the ones who have the ultimate responsibility for ensuring each of these steps are completed properly. In this example, the product development team should be consulted in each stage due to the obviously close relationship they have to any necessary development. The mobile technical team here would need to be consulted on all except the business case. Here, they just need to be informed. They're not going to be responsible for building it out directly, but they will be expected to help maintain the solution after it's been completed. That's why they'll be consulted with on all of these earlier stages. Finally, the project manager only needs to be consulted when it comes to recommending action, and they only need to be informed of the business case because it then becomes their responsibility to take that business case, turn it into a project charter along with the assistance of the sponsor and perhaps the business analyst, and then begin the plans for bringing that business case's requirements and objectives to life.